All right, we're gonna give it one more minute and then we'll get started. This is block one, week one of our teacher training, our virtual summer teacher training for natural resources. All right, it looks like it's about 9:02. I'm going to go ahead and get started just so that we can enjoy the rest of the day. So my name is Stephanie Hospelhorn. I am the education specialist here with Illinois Ag in the Classroom. And welcome to our teacher trainings for this summer 2021. We are super excited to have you. This year, just kind of like last year, looks a little bit different than normal, but we're really excited to be able to host these virtual events for you. And we really hope that you guys, get something out of this, whether it's learning something new about agriculture or, finding some way to connect agriculture into your classroom. Of course, that is what we do here with Illinois Ag in the Classroom is show you so many different varieties of ways on connecting agriculture and using it as a tool and a learning tool in your classroom. Teaching kids where their food comes from, where their clothes come from, our natural resources, all of that fun stuff. So our virtual teacher training this summer is going to be a set of 4 two-week blocks. So this first block is all about natural resources. So week one, today, we are going to cover a variety of topics. I'm going to introduce some different resources, some lessons, just general information on different topics. We're going to talk about how this can connect into your curriculum across the topics, ELA, social studies, science, all of that fun stuff. And then right when we get done, and there is a slide for this. So right when we get finished and I end the webinar, there is going to be, it's going to direct you immediately to our blog. And our blog page is going to have the link for the evaluation and the link to sign up for block 2, which is going to be all about livestock. So the evaluation at the very end, basically, so here's how this works. Week one, we're going to go through all this information, share some lessons, all that fun stuff that I just talked about. And then next Tuesday for week 2, we are going to actually do a handful of our activities and show you how they're done, give you some reading resources that pair nicely with those, and talk about the materials and the expense and all of that, fun stuff. So if you are one of the first 50 people to fill out the evaluation right when this ends, then we will mail you a box with all of the materials that you need to do the activities with us next week. And so we encourage you that right when this ends, go ahead and it's going to automatically send you to the blog page. Now, I also have on that slide a little link just in case something weird with technology happens and it for some reason doesn't, send you right there. I'll also give you the small link that you can just type into your browser and get there. So our blog page is where we have been keeping everything. So at the end, I'm going to encourage you guys again to follow us on all of our social media and check out our blog where we have tons and tons of resources, videos, activities, all sorts of stuff. So with me today, we have Madison. She is our intern for summer 2021. We're so excited to have her here. She is working behind the scenes with me. Just in case something weird happens, she's going to take over. And then Chris and Kevin are out with our Summer Ag Institutes presenting at different counties throughout Illinois. So if you are in one of the counties who signed up for a Summer Ag Institute, you'll probably see one of us sometime this summer. With that being said, let's go ahead and get started. So our very first activity is called Say It with Soil, and this is one of my absolutely favorite activities. One, because I just love soil science and everything, dirty about soil and the bugs in there, but also because it ties in with ELA perfectly. And it also ties in with social studies. So first I want to point out the book that I have up here on the screen. It's called A Handful of Dirt by Raymond Weil. And fantastic author, fantastic book, really digs deep into what dirt is made up of, all of the microbes and the particles that make up soil and how important soil is. Fantastic book, informational, and great to be paired with any soil lesson. The quote that I have up here is, "We are a part of the earth and it is a part of us. What befalls the earth befalls all the sons of the earth." And so this is a quote by Chief Seattle in 1854. So if you use this activity, this is a great way not only to tie in with ELA, but also social studies. Who was Chief Seattle? Where was he located in the world? What was happening historically at that time? And why is this quote important, not only for that time period or for his background, but also just in general with science and for the world? And then you could compare that quote with, we have a handful of quotes, probably 40 or 50 quotes that all have to do with soil. And you can compare all of those different quotes, who said them, what was happening, and the time period, and see that the idea of soil is very similar throughout history. So right away, I'm going to encourage you guys. I have a little activity for you guys. And if you are teachers here, you may or may not be familiar with a virtual resource called Padlet. It's an online source. So if you guys could minimize my screen or do a separate window and then go to https://IAITC.co/say soil. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen and get to this other. Oh, what's happening? Oops, sorry. I don't know what the heck that was. Okay. All right. So once you get there, let me share my screen again. Okay, this is what it's going to look like. So if you go ahead, there are 4 different quotes there. One of them is the one that I had just shared. So if you could just choose one of the quotes, read through all 4 of them, think about it, reflect, and choose one of them, and then just add your thoughts. What do you think was happening during that time period? What's the importance of the quote itself? What's the importance of the person who said that quote? Anything like that. So go ahead and go to that link. Let me see if I can. Looks like Connie shared the link. If you got, I'll share it again. Sorry about that. I went a little bit too fast. It's been a minute since I've presented. So you can either click on my link or the link that Connie had shared. And this is a really cool website, Padlet, if you haven't heard of it. It's one of our favorite resources to use when we're presenting virtually. This is very much like a bulletin board, and so you can either have prompts up there for people to use. Oh, hold on, let me do, here we go. Did that work? I just sent it again. I accidentally had it on all panelists. We're off to a great start. All right. So, like I was saying, this is a really fun website. You can either have prompts up like I already have up there. You can have multiple prompts. You can assign students, if your last name starts with letters A through D, comment on this one. Comment, if you're E through J, comment on number 2. There's also, you don't have to have any prompts and you can just have students create their comments. And then have them just add a comment to somebody else's post. There's all sorts of fun things that you can do with this. So I'm going to go ahead and give it about 2 more minutes, give you guys some more time to read through all the quotes and reflect. Awesome. And another good thing I forgot to mention is that this is in real time. So as you guys are adding your quotes, hopefully you can see on my screen that they are being posted live. So with quote number 2, we have a nation that destroys its soil, destroys itself. Talking about how we need to take care of the soil, because if it takes care of us, then we need to take care of it, which somebody else agreed with. Our food sources rely on the soil, and so we need to take care of it and nurture it. If we don't try to preserve the soil and our land or respect the soil, we're not going to be able to keep up our economy, and have enough food for our really quickly growing population. Quote number 1, we know more about the stars in the sky, things that we can't touch at all. It's so far away. And then something that we walk on every single day, we don't even know as much about. I love that you said that, because it really is tactile. The soil that we can touch and study, we know less of than, things in our solar system. That was fantastic. Showing how many people are fascinated with space and its beauty, but that we could learn so much about soil. And, soil gets a really bad name, because people don't like bugs or getting dirty, but that's the fun part about learning about soil. And so we should really be teaching our kids about this. We need soil to survive. We need to be conservative and mindful of our soil to sustain crops. Making sure that we're not destroying our rich soils. Absolutely. Thank you guys for participating in that. I'm going to go ahead and stop our share. So again, that is called Padlet. You can create all sorts of different types of Padlets on there. You can do stuff with a map. I encourage you guys to check out that website. So with soil, Illinois has beautiful, fertile soil, which is one way that we can produce so much crop. We just have such beautiful soil, and our state soil is called drummer soil. We have this website called soilsforteachers.org. Awesome website. And so drummer soil was actually first established in Ford County in 1929, and it was named after Drummer Creek in the Drummer Township. And so that's where that state soil comes from, is from our Ford County. Drummer soil is the most common of all dark colored soils. And the reason it's so dark is because it has a high amount of organic materials, mainly from the decomposition of prairie vegetation and the movement of our glacial patterns. If you take a look at the screen, this first clip is just what their website looks like. I encourage you guys, please check out this website. There are so many resources on here, but at the top, if you click on Around the World, it's gonna bring you to this site, and it has a map of the United States, and you can click on any of the states and it's gonna take you to information about the soils in those states. So if you click on Illinois, it's going to take you to a PDF that talks all about the soil, drummer soil, the history of it, all of that stuff. This right here is a profile. On the bottom left-hand corner of the screen is a profile of drummer soil. So you can see how rich and dark all of that is, and it's about 6 to 8 inches. And then as you get further, it starts getting mixed. And then you can see that there's different types of soils and clays. Now, I mentioned this because we have a really fun activity, which we're going to be doing next week, that has to do with soil profiling with your students. And it's called Play-Doh soil profiling. So we are going to do that next week, and we're really excited about that one. It's one of our newest activities. But check out Illinois Soils, so soilsforteachers.org. And that way, when you're talking about soil, then you're also encouraging your students to use primary sources to learn more about it, the history, where it's located. They're dealing with different types of vocabulary with using maps and identifying identifying the different soils and the particles. So there's lots of different ways that you can blend this into any curriculum, whether you're teaching math, social studies, science, anything like that. Now this website, the language is a little bit higher level, I would say around 5th grade and above, but there's definitely a lot of different images and visuals that you could use for lower grade levels. Awesome. And by the way, please feel free to use the chat. I'm going to stop every once in a while to make sure that I'm answering all your questions. Madison is also in the background, that if she can answer any of the questions, she can, or any coordinators who are on here, feel free to pitch in and answer any questions or give more information than probably what I could give. So that's everything we have for that. We do have one more activity for soil that I'm going to show you in this little video. It's really awesome to be used as a demonstration, and that's only because you need to use a knife, and that's probably not the best thing to give your students of any age. So it is perfect for a demonstration. So I'm going to go ahead and play this video for you. Okay, so that is our slice of soil activity, and hopefully every time I watch that or I hear about this, I learn a little bit something new, or I have a different idea. So you could definitely use this for fractions, looking at all those different parts, talking about climate and weather patterns, looking at soil and erosion and all of that sort of stuff. So this activity can be used for a lot of different things. And like I said, it's better to be done as a demonstration if you're going to actually have the materials with you, or you could just show this video, which can be found on our YouTube account. And so feel free to use any of those resources to share with your students, or just to use as maybe just a background for you to learn before you do the demonstration. The two books that I have up here on the screen are awesome books to be paired with anything when you're talking about erosion, dirt, soil health, microbes, anything like that. Our first book is Erosion: How Hugh Bennett Saved America's Soil and Ended the Dust Bowl. And that's by author Darcy Pattinson. And basically it's about Hugh Bennett, who was the founder of the NRCS, which is Natural Resources Conservation Services. And so it really is talking about how we have a scientist who studied soil, and when during that time period when the Dust Bowl was taking place, and a lot of communities couldn't grow their food, there had to be something done, and what was the cause? And so Hugh Bennett was a huge advocate who confronted politicians and really encouraged them to take this seriously, and that there was something that we could do before it was too late. So it's a fantastic story based on true events. So go ahead and check that out. And the illustrations are awesome and very friendly. And then Up in the Garden, Down in the Dirt is by Kate Messner. And this is a really cool story because on above the ground, we're looking at a grandmother and her granddaughter and what they're doing to prep and plant and take care of the garden and then harvest. But then what's going on down in the dirt? There's a whole nother world happening that is helping the health of their garden and all of the crop that they're growing. And so it's a fun way to learn without even knowing that you're learning. It's lyrical, and it really shows that harmony of what's happening above the ground and all of the beneficial relationships between the bugs, the microbes, the little critters that are running around. And so it really shows you how to appreciate that, all of that is also helping your plants grow on top of what you're doing with, planting and watering and making sure that your soil is healthy and all of that kind of stuff. Awesome books. The next thing I want to talk to you guys about is composting. And this is, it seems to kind of be a topic that is becoming more and more popular. And so about 20% of our discarded food or our discarded waste is actually food. So when we're thinking about what your garbage can currently is filled up with, and you're thinking about, man, I just meal prepped and, I was cutting all of this stuff up, but all the stems and the peels and the seeds and everything that I didn't use in my meal, I threw in the trash bin. Okay. And so about 20% of the waste that we have all around is going to be coming from food and food scraps. Maybe we didn't eat it. Maybe you forgot about it and it's in the back of your fridge getting moldy. And so we could remove millions of tons every single year of food waste from the landfills, which is just like, to me, it's mind blowing because it seems like such a simple thing. When landfills, when you start getting into the nitty gritty of landfills and learning about, their length of life and how they're cared for and all of that kind of stuff. It seems like we could reduce the amount of land that we're using for landfills just by simply composting. So there's a ton of benefits with composting. It's going to enrich your soil and start breaking down all of that food. So it's not just, put in a pile and can't really break down. When you're looking at anaerobic versus aerobic breakdown, there's just not enough oxygen in landfills for that stuff to break down like it should be. And so not only with composting are you enriching the soil, you're helping maintain that moisture to have some really nice fertile soil, and you're suppressing any pests and diseases that could come from that decomposition without oxygen. And so that's, super, super beneficial. It also reduces the need to apply chemical fertilizers. So when you go to, you're wanting your roses and your vegetables to look really, nice and plump and get a good harvest. A lot of times we go into our plant stores and we buy, different fertilizers or food, plant foods. This is a natural fertilizer that you could use without even thinking about how it might affect the health of the microbes and the bugs that are living in the soil around all your plants, which are the ones that are really helping, make sure you have a beautiful crop and help with that soil health. So that's a huge, huge bonus, really getting rid of that need for chemical fertilizers, especially if we as individuals can do it. And farmers, they are really practicing stewardship and finding new and cool ways to make sure that they're getting fertilizers or natural, whether it is composting, manure practice, or manure management, or using chemical fertilizers. And I'll talk about that in just a minute. But it just reducing our reliance on chemicals is super beneficial for everybody. And especially when you're thinking about the soil and everything that's living in the soil, it's something that we definitely need to consider. So super awesome conversations that you can have with your students. What do they know about composting? Talk about that first. What could be composting? What does that even mean? What does it look like? Another benefit is that it's going to reduce methane emissions from landfills. So when we're thinking about landfills and everything that is slowly breaking down and the gases that are produced from that, it's a lot more than what you would actually think. And so by, composting our own food scraps and other objects, it's going to reduce a lot of those emissions that are going to be going into our atmosphere, which, has a whole domino effect. And then also it's going to reduce your carbon footprint. Who doesn't want to reduce their carbon footprint to make sure that we are not overheating our world and just abusing some of our resources? So with composting, I have this graphic over here that's actually from the Flood Brothers Disposal and Recycling Services, which is up in Northern Illinois. And so they are really big on encouraging how to recycle properly, how to dispose of things properly, and how to compost. And so on the graphic, it's talking about that the greens and browns are the things that you can and want to compost. And then anything that is in that red category is a no-go. And then also you're going to want to sprinkle in some water, keep it moist, churn it up. And I'm going to show you a video in just a minute. But we're looking at how you can, any vegetable and fruit scraps, peels, rinds, grass clippings. If you have a lawnmower that catches all the clippings, throw those in there. Coffee grounds, don't throw those in your garbage, just toss them. Toss them in your compost pile. Hair, fur, leaves, wood chips, hay straw, eggshells, all of that fun stuff. And hopefully, and when I'm talking, I'm like, gosh, I have thrown a lot of that in my garbage just within the last couple days. And I have been looking into composting, but we do it a lot more often. And the more we become aware of it, the more we're like, gosh, it's not just a maybe once a week thing. It's like every single day. So keep that in mind. Oops, I want to go back real quick. I'm sorry. So we have 3 books here. Winnie Finn, Worm Farmer by Carol Brendler. Awesome book. Strong female protagonist. Is our main character. She's kind of a tomboy, your classic jean wearer, t-shirt wearer, but also does love to wear jewelry, and she loves worms, and she is just trying to find a way to win a prize at the county fair while using, trying to figure out how she can use her worms to win this prize. So it's really an encouraging story on thinking outside of the box and being independent and just being yourself and doing what you love. The Great Compost Heap by Renee Smith, also a fantastic story about a little boy who learned about composting at school and wants to encourage his neighbors to compost. When his compost bin becomes too big, the city allows this one area on their block to become a community compost heap. And so this story is great about really getting the community involved and doing what's right for the earth and for you, and just becoming aware of being, a steward of the earth and what you can do individually. And then Compost Stew, an A to Z recipe for earth by Mary McKenna Seidels, is an informational book that really talks about what is compost, what are the ingredients, and how do you make it work. So it's just a really fun book to introduce students on how you're supposed to run a compost and what that even means. So 3 great books I encourage you guys to check out. I'm going to show you a video real quick, and then once the video is done, I'm going to check the chat and answer some questions. This is a video by Chris, who is our education manager. And if you haven't seen any of his videos, he is doing these videos called A Minute with a Guy Who Thinks Everyone Should Have a Garden. This week's episode is based on vermicomposting. So using that idea of composting, but also adding worms. And so he's going to talk all about that. And I'm just going to put the slide in there. You guys will see in a different week his bee video. So if you haven't checked out Bee School, go on our blog and check out. He is a beekeeper, and so he takes you through setting it up and how how it all works and all of that stuff. And so I encourage you to check out those videos. So here we go with A Minute with a Guy Who Thinks Everyone Should Have a Garden.
Hey, it's Chris with Illinois Agriculture in the Classroom. We're in the shop today and we're going to build a worm composter.
You need a cooler drain, 2 2 totes, drill bits, and then a drill.
All right, here we go. Let's talk about compost. Compost does take time and energy and some scientific know-how to do correctly, but making compost is an excellent way to take something that would typically be a waste product, whether it be animal manure or our food scraps, our food waste, and turning them into something that greatly benefits soil health. We use compost on our farm in a couple different ways. So I make some compost using leftover soil from our microgreen operation. So we plant trays of microgreens every week and harvest them, and then have our potting soil left over. So we add that to a pile, and then throughout the year we add our plant scraps from plants that we harvest and dig up out of the soil. We also add straw and manure from our chicken coop in there as well. That's not nearly enough compost for our farm though, and our farm is small. It's only about a ½ acre, but we do need to buy in some compost every few years. Luckily, we have a local university that has a pretty large compost operation, and we're able to buy compost in pretty cheap from them. So I'm standing next to the remains of the compost that we bought this year from them. We bought in about 20,000 pounds of compost, and the goal was to add about a ½ inch of an inch of compost to all of our planting beds. This compost is kind of cool because it's made from livestock waste, so pig and cow manure, and they get in leaves from local city and municipalities and mix leaves that would otherwise again be, burned or thrown into a landfill. They take those leaves, mix them with manure, and make a really good compost that then other farmers can come and buy and add to their fields. So it's a really cool idea. Today we're going to talk about vermicomposting, which is making compost using worms. This is a great thing.
Oops, I'm sorry about that.
To do if you have a small garden, or even if you don't have a garden but you have kitchen scraps, you can make vermicompost in your basement in a plastic tub with minimal input and minimal work. So today we're going to show you how to do that. We've never done this before, but we're going to try it out and we're going to see how it goes over the course of the next year. We have our 2 totes. This is a cooler drain. You can buy these anywhere that coolers are sold. So we drilled a hole to allow that cooler drain to come through. So this is going to be used for, as the worms compost the things that we put in here, they are going to create worm juice basically, and it's going to drain down into this container, and then periodically we'll tilt this forward and drain it through that drain, and we're going to be able to add that to our gardens as a really good fertilizer. In addition, we'll have all of the vermicompost, which is compost made by worms, will be in here. So you can see we drilled a series of very small holes in here, smaller than the size of the worms. And to this, we're going to add some damp newspaper. We're going to add some compost that we have that's already made. And then we're going to start adding some kitchen scraps in here as well to feed our worms.
Okay, so what we're going to do is take a handful of newspapers, a handful of compost, and do a pattern. Newspaper, compost, so it mixes up.
And our newspaper is supposed to be like a damp sponge, but not sopping wet, which I think is what we have. Just looking here, I think we'll probably need to add more newspaper pretty quickly. We'll kind of see how things go here. We don't have a ton of worms. We have about 250 worms that we ordered.
That's a lot of worms, though.
It seems like a lot, but this size container can handle a lot more worms. From what we've read, worms will double their size. They'll multiply in size every 90 days. And so we'll see how quickly they expand their colony here. So now let's grab our worms.
Oh, there's one.
So these are called red wigglers. These are different than the earthworms that you'd find in your garden, most likely.
Well, they're pretty wiggly.
They are wiggly, yeah, and they're a little smaller, and they are considered better for doing this vermicomposting in your home. All right, so Lincoln, go ahead and dump those worms in here, and let's see what they think. Okay. So, wow, look at all of them.
What?
So those are our worms, and we're gonna get them to work here very quickly. I can tell already we definitely need to get some more newspaper in here, which we'll do. And then we've got a few kitchen scraps already picked out. One thing that I read as well is you need to try to bury the kitchen scraps, because if they're left on the top layer, it's gonna attract fruit flies. And so if this is in your home, that's not gonna be a good idea. And so we're gonna make sure that we do everything we can to keep that from happening. All right, so we are gonna give these guys a couple weeks in here, and we'll kind of see how they go, and we'll update you on the process to see how quickly they turn our kitchen scraps into compost.
Okay, so just getting started with the vermicomposting, and Chris and his son Lincoln, who is our unofficial video person, way better at any of the stuff that I do, but they are going to continue doing updates with their vermicomposting throughout the year. So if you haven't already checked out any of these videos, we post them on our social media, and they can also be found on our blog page. So I encourage you guys to keep up with that so you can see how our vermicomposting is doing throughout the year.
Hey, it's Chris with Illinois Agriculture in the
All right. Okay, before I go to this next slide, I want to hit the chat box. So some books that are good for high school. We have a lot of novels that are good for high school, not necessarily focused on composting, but there are, when we're talking about wheat, like The Thing About Luck would be a good book for junior high, high school level. When you're looking at the culture of food, Sorry for Your Loss is a fantastic book for upper junior high and high school age. There's lots of different books. We do have a book list, some of our very favorite ag themed books that is posted on our blog. So if you check out our blog, it's going to be, let's see, I will get that link to you guys, but we have lots of different chapter books that are good for high school age. And by the way, if you guys continue coming to all of our virtual trainings, we have lots of different books. So next week, we're going to be talking about books that connect to all these concepts, and same with the following blocks. So if we don't hit your grade level with different books, please send us an email so that, you know, at the end of all of this, if you're looking for more books or more resources, please reach out to us so that we can get you the materials that you need. So let's see, what about bringing, who is this from? Nancy had a question. Could you claim to students that it could increase the land for growing nutritious food? In other words, solving a problem. Are we talking about composting? I don't know if I went a little bit too late from this, but composting, absolutely. When we're talking about, it may not necessarily increase the land, but it could help increase the yield that we get at the end of a harvest season, or for you personally harvesting. Oh, the apple activity. Yeah. So with a slice of soil. So a cool idea that you could talk about with the amount of land that we have is, in terms of it getting more land, compare that to the swamplands and the mountains and the deserts and stuff like that. So in that case, we can't expand the land, but things that we could do to not shrink the amount of land is to really think about, well, you know, our cities and buildings are growing outwards, but maybe we should start thinking about vertically growing so that we're not taking up a lot of this land. Maybe we don't need those extra, 5 Starbucks in the same town, or, X amount of gas stations and whatever. So thinking about using our management wisely. We obviously have a really rapidly increased population. So we're going to need more stores, more houses, things like that. But what could we do to not reduce the amount of land that we actually have to grow crop on, but also make sure that there's enough resources and homes for everybody that's here. So that's a great way to start getting students thinking. Have them brainstorm either by themselves. You could do a think, pair, share with something like that. And then have them write down their own thoughts, have them, pair up with either one person or a couple, have them share their thoughts, and then write them down on the board. And then you could definitely have a really good discussion with that at many different age levels, and kind of see what their misconceptions are, but also what their ideas are. Kids are actually really good at thinking outside of the box. And I think we lose that skill as we get older. So it's awesome to hear what they have to say. And then bringing in animals, rats, all of that kind of stuff with composting. If you are doing it correctly, it's not going to draw the attention from any of that stuff, because, and also a huge thing that we hear is, oh, it's going to be stinky, but it won't. If you're rotating it and really making sure that you're taking care of it, it's not going to. Now, it might bring up a couple of bugs, like Chris said in the video, if your scraps are on top. You might get some fruit flies and stuff, but overall, animals aren't going to touch it. And especially with compost bins, you can buy them where they have lids and everything to keep out, raccoons, things like that. So there's a lot of different ways that you can manage that and make sure that it's not getting, dug up by any little critters or anything like that. Awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and move on. Again, please, any questions, comments, go ahead and add them into the chat box. We'd love to hear what you're thinking. Obviously, if you guys are teachers out there or any sort of education profession, collaboration is super important, and hearing thoughts and ideas. So we just really love that, especially because it helps us maybe explain something a little bit more that maybe we didn't while we were presenting, or maybe gives us more ideas on lessons to create or how to explain information that, we weren't explaining completely. So we always appreciate your comments and everything. So we're looking at manure management. Chris had brought this up in his video, that manure can be used in compost. And it's also, one of those things where, poop happens, everybody poops, and there's lots of books on poop. The most famous called Everybody Poops. And it is really nasty and gross, but it's also really, really cool when you think about it, and all the things that you can learn from it. But I'll keep that conversation for a later time. But there are lots of byproducts in agriculture and just in general that, sometimes we consider waste. But it actually could be used for something different. So manure is one of those things that we're like, oh, it's just literally waste. It's nothing, but we could do so many things with it. So the first thing is having methane digesters, and for biogas, and that could be another way to generate heat and electricity. So when we're trying to think of renewable resources, poop is one of them. Manure is one of them, because it's got a lot of methane emissions, and we can capture those emissions and break them down into a gas that we can use to generate heat and electricity. And many hog farmers and cattle farmers have their own methane digesters. And so they use that to, heat their barns and things. And so it's a really, really cool idea of recycling on their own farms, that that it's helping them save some money, so that they have, more profit for themselves and for, their machinery and everything that they need to do that it takes to take care of livestock or their farm, grow the food for their animals, all of that fun stuff. The solids from the manure can actually be reused for bedding. And I know that sounds gross, but the way that they get it all, and it's soft, it works for the animals, it's reusable, and it's not going to be, you know, all this disgusting slop. It's dried out, and it's a lot more manageable than, you know, buying hay and all that, and that is used as well. But that could be another thing that many farmers are actually using today. The nutrients used as natural fertilizer and for compost, our poo has a lot of nutrients in it, believe it or not. It's all a part about the nutrient cycle. And so we could use those to, you know, benefit the soil, you know, in our personal gardens and all of that fun stuff. Organic matter, promoting that soil, again, if you're putting it down as a natural fertilizer. And then any undigested fiber can be reused to make any of the little peat substitutes, nursery pots, paper, all sorts of stuff. And I actually have a little journal that's made from paper from the undigested fiber from cow manure. And it's pretty cool that we're thinking, well, this is another way that we can create, you know, paper and all these products instead of having to use the amount of trees that we do to create these products. So lots of cool things. It's a really cool topic to talk about with your students, only because even though deep down they're like really grossed out, they do think it's fun and cool. And I taught 8th grade and 6th grade science, and you know, students just get a kick out of it at any age. They think it's funny, but they're also learning a ton from it, and it's a fun way to teach them about this kind of stuff. And then I just wanted to point out the picture that's up there on the slide. That is a type of application. It's called a disc or a Coulter injection system. And basically it uses vertical discs that are pulled through the soil. And then there's little injectors that inject a slurry like manure about 6 to 8 inches below the surface. And so farmers, a lot of farmers will do this and inject it under the ground. That way, if it's under the ground, not as much ammonia is lost, but also when you're doing it, especially in the off season, it's going to take some time to get into the soil and do its thing, but also because you don't want to do it at a certain time to where your plants, you know, might be infected with some of that. You know, we do know that poop carries a lot of diseases and can be really bad. So farmers at different scales will use this type of machinery to inject this slurry-like manure into their fields as a natural fertilizer for in different times. So keep that in mind. We do have farmers doing that, but they do it at times where it's going to be safe for the crop that they're growing. There are also different types of injection systems. There's a knifing system, a sweeping injection system, very similar to this, but a little bit different in terms of the way that it gets down into the soil. All of these things are really cool things to look a little bit more into, have your students do some research, talk about them. It's just could be a fun discussion to have. You could ask them to come up with their own ideas on how to you know, create heat and electricity, look at other renewable energies, look into other types of fertilizers. You could grow some plants in your class using organic matter, compost, a compost with manure, and then, you know, a store-bought soil, and look at the differences in the plant growth, and then collect that data, have them measure the plants, record all of it. So there's a lot of really cool inquiry projects that you can do just by introducing some of these topics and then having them explore. So a lot of this, especially with plant growth, going back to water, what happens if the water is polluted? Or actually not going back, we're about to talk about that. So what happens if water is polluted? What do plants like to grow in? I mean, could you do an inquiry where you're watering them with Mountain Dew or coffee versus water versus vinegar? You know, there's lots of things that you can do to look at the effects of fertilizers, water, soil that are going to affect that plant growth, and then have them collect that data. So a lot of fun stuff that you can do. And there's a lot of local areas that can help get these resources to you. Okay, the 4 R's. So when we're looking at nutrient stewardship, this is a huge topic one that you see in the media, one that farmers are constantly thinking about, and of course, one that just normal people every day, talk about. So when we're thinking about fertilizers, we know that agriculture, in that industry, we have to make sure that the large amount of crop that we're growing has a good yield so that we can feed the world. So what happens when we have a lot of climate changes and different weather patterns? This season's super rainy and the other season was super dry. And how do we make sure we get a good yield so that we can feed the world? So when we're talking about fertilizers and making sure that those plants are healthy, a huge push is looking at the 4 R's. And that means the right source, the right rate, the right time, and the right place. So when we're thinking about the right source, actually all of this can be connected back to your classroom when we're thinking about differentiated instruction. The farmers are going to take the time to take care of their fields and spray this fertilizer for the growth of their plants in the same sense that we do as teachers with making sure that our students have the right resources and the right rate of learning, and they have the right environment so that they can learn in their individual way. So when we're thinking of the right source, we're looking at it's important to select right nutrients for a plant's needs. Well, this is like our content. So we've got a lot of different types of materials for students. We have the same story at varying reading levels. Give your students the reading levels that are appropriate for their skill base. Presenting information with both auditory and visual means to make sure that your tactile learners, you can have some hands-on stuff. You have the visuals for the visual learners. You are speaking about it for your auditory learners. And so, we're doing this in our classrooms, just like the farmers are doing in the fields. The right rate. We're looking at too little of something is going to limit the growth, but too much is going to be wasteful, and it's not going to get to them. So this is like the products we're using. Have them learn it, have them rehearse, apply, use those extension activities, give them options to show their understanding in both formal and summative assessments, or formative and summative assessments, giving them rubrics that match their understanding and their skill level, giving them the option to work alone or in a group. It's kind of based on it. This kid, I can't put him in a group because it's going to be too overstimulating for him. He's not going to work well. So let's partner him up here or have him work by himself. So having those right sources around is really important, having those products. The right time, we're looking at a plant's needs, access to different nutrients in the soil at different times. So what one student in the classroom needs right now is going to be different than what a different student needs right now. And so this is all about the process, using different materials, tiered activities, different interest centers, working with some students to develop those personal agendas, using manipulatives, giving them different lengths of time to complete a task based on their personal need. A farmer isn't going to spray his entire field, if, over in this acre, it's a little bit lower level, so it got drowned out. The plants aren't growing that well. He's not going to spray that and all of the crops that are already growing really well, because the crops that are growing really well don't need that extra fertilizer, where these crops do, and that's exactly what our students need. And then, of course, the right place. Our students need a specific place. Just like you and I, we need different environments to be able to sit and be focused and be productive. And that is super important for students, having, whether it's a actual location or a type of chair that they're sitting on, having maybe something like the little fidgets that they can mess around with, as long as it's not distracting them or others, which also, obviously as teachers, we know is a learning curve with all of that, but there has to be a specific place. This was a huge eye opener for adults during quarantine and realizing, gosh, now I have to make an office out of my living space when my, children are over here and my husband's trying to work from over here and I can't focus. Where can I go that I can focus and get work done? And so we have to keep that in mind for our students. So all of the 4 R's, what farmers are doing with their field and practicing stewardship and trying to learn as much as they can for conservation and not over applying these nutrients. They have to have fertilizers, but it doesn't all have to be fertilized at the same time or the same rate. And so keep that in mind when you're talking with your students and teaching them this year. All right, so now we're going to go on to the next natural resource, which is water. So before I play this video, I'm going to just introduce a few of these books. One Well, The Story of Water on Earth is by Rochelle Strauss. And it's just bringing awareness to water and, how humans use it, how it is being abused, but also educating, how we can protect it. So if we know that it's being abused in this way, what are ways that we could decrease or even eliminate that waste of water or the pollution of the water and things like that. So it's really a beautiful book for kids of all ages. I would even use this in my 6th, 7th, 8th grade class. Children's books are not just for grade school. You can use them at many different levels because the pictures also tell a story, and it helps students really connect the words with the pictures, or take the words out and have them really dig into those pictures and try to imagine what is being talked about. So there's a lot of cool things that you could do with upper grades, even with kids' books. The second book is We Are Water Protectors by Carol Lindstrom and then illustrator Michaela Godey. And both the author and illustrator are proud members of different indigenous tribes, and they're using their background to portray this call to action to protect one of the most precious natural resources that we have on this planet that we rely on for life. And so it's very poetic text, beautiful watercolors, and it's just celebrating movements, especially indigenous-led movements, to protect our water and encourage understanding about our planet and the interconnectedness. So I highly encourage that book as well. And then Hey Water is a really cute little story about a little girl who is just noticing water everywhere and that it looks different everywhere and it's got different shapes and it feels different. And so it kind of talks about, there's some back matter there with the water cycle and conservation of water and things like that. So I'm going to go ahead and play this little video, and this is one of our activities that can be done as a demonstration. Again, just like the last one, you could show this video or you could do it in the classroom. And if you do have the resources, you could have students be into a small group to do this, but it deals with water, so it could get messy. So with my 6th grade classes, I just do it as a demonstration, but mine might have been a little bit more wild. So this is our drop of water activity. So that's a fun little activity that you can do. Now, I do want to point out that you can use salt water. There is the desalination process that can work to turn salt water into fresh water, but it takes a lot of time and a lot of energy. So you could talk about that with your students. You know, yeah, we have all of this salt water and we know how to remove the salt, but you know, how much does it take? How much energy is that going to use, and where can we get that energy from? And then also, how can we protect our water? So lots of great discussion pointers. Now, I know I'm getting I'm pushing the time. I'm really sorry. So we're going to go through monarchs. Awesome thing to talk about, especially when you're looking at monarch migration. We have a really fun pollinator activity called powder powered pollination. And you're using a powder from like macaroni, or you could use any sort of little powder. And then you have your little pipe cleaner as your butterfly, and then it travels around. They put it on their finger and it travels around to the different flowers, and you see that the pollen gets stuck on the pipe cleaner. And you can talk about that anatomy of our pollinators, how they have like little hairs and everything, and talk about pollination as a process. If you go to Illinois, www.illinoismonarchproject.com, there's lots of really cool things that you can do to help save our monarch populations. Lots of free resources on there. You could, as a class, sign up and donate to help protect. You could do a lot of things with watching the monarch migration. Super cool stuff. And then we do have a bug scavenger hunt. So you can either do this with your kiddos at home or with your students, where you can go outside and explore different types of bugs, whether they are beneficial or kind of harmful. And you can talk about the differences and maybe what they do to be beneficial or what they do that they're harmful. So have those discussions with your kiddos. We have 3 books: Monarch Butterfly by Gail Gibbons, Senorita Mariposo by Ben Gundersheimer, and then Butterflies Belong Here, the story of one idea, 30 kids, and a world of butterflies by Deborah Hopkinson. And so these are fantastic books. All talk about different things. Monarch Butterfly is more about the anatomy, labeled diagrams, very simple text and vocabulary, introducing some of those concepts of anatomy and all that. Senorita Mariposa is really a cool book that talks about the journey of the butterflies and who they meet and the different people and places that they encounter on their travels for their migration, and then also their struggles with different weather patterns, climate change, you know, things with the planet, things like that. And it is a bilingual text. So you're going to get a little bit of different languages in there, which is really awesome. And then Butterflies Belong Here, looking at a real story about real change and how students, no matter how small you are, you have a lot of power to make a change in the world. And so it's a really good book about a little girl finding herself when she didn't fit in, and then she becomes this leader of this this movement to protect the butterfly. So it's a really cool story. Okay, with that being said, our ag mags are available to teachers. Please contact your county coordinator to get free sets for your classrooms. This year, we've also been working on what we call ag ventures that pair with the ag mags. They're nonfiction texts. Right around the 4th grade reading level. So you can, even for your 2nd grade kiddos, send a pack home or send one home and have them share it with their parents, with their siblings, encourage their parents to read some sections with them and really develop that, that communication with you and family members. But we have the adventures that are going to be cross-curricular, and they have ELA, social studies, little games built in. The pollinator one has got math, so lots of cool stuff. Check those out. Journey 2050, I encourage you guys to check out. It's a free resource that helps. It's a game of a virtual farm simulation, and it's just exploring world food and sustainability. So the goal is, how are we going to sustainably feed 10 billion people by 2050? And your students go through these 7 different levels. They're each about an hour. And it's talking about what is it, you as a farmer, how are you going to have economic sustainability? How are you sustaining your crop? And, with all these different things. And so it's a really cool, eye-opening experience for your students and you, and it's free. So please check that out. It's a really cool resource. We do have a couple upcoming opportunities. So we have our book club. Chris Wyan is going to be leading that, our education director. He will be leading that summer book club on Wednesday, July 14th is going to be the introduction. And he's going to talk about the two books, The Thing About Luck and Chirp. Both are very awesome books, ag related, and can be used for, I would say, upper junior high, high school level. And so on July 14th, please sign up before that. He's going to give you the description of books. You guys are going to get to know each other, things like that. And then you get to pick which book you want to read. And then we will send you that book. And then we'll give you a couple weeks to read it. And then at the beginning of August, there will be two separate nights, one for The Thing About Luck and one for Chirp, where you guys come together and you talk about different things that happened in the book, how you can relate it, how you can teach it in your classroom, different resources you can use, all of that awesome stuff. Then we have our grants. We're super excited. We have 2 grants coming up. We have them every single year. Last year was a little wonky, but we're bringing them back this year. We have our teacher project grant and we have our teacher book grant. Please join me on August 5th at 10 a.m. And I'm going to go over all of the details for what these things are. I'm going to give you examples of previous winners, how to write your, I'm going to give you tips and tricks on how to fill out your application so that it stands out. I'm going to give you ideas. I'm going to share lessons that you can connect with the books from the book grant, all of this fun stuff. So please sign up. Both of these are on our blog. They're on the main page, or you can go to those little links and sign up for those different opportunities. Let me check the chat real quick. This presentation is going to be on our blog. There's going to be a page for it. The page that it's going to send you to, we will post it once it gets uploaded. And then also it will be on our YouTube channel. So they will be in both places. And then we did have somebody talk about having a compost bin in their classroom. When they ate lunch, they would put their appropriate scraps in there, and they had kids from other classes save their food scraps. That's awesome. That's building community between your own classroom and the multiple classrooms. So that is super cool. Thank you so much for sharing. Last thing. Here we go, the reflection and sign up. So this is the little, the link that you can go to, IAITC.co/June 8th. If when I stop this, if it doesn't take you anywhere, that's where you need to go, or it's just on our blog under teacher training. Which under here, there's a little tab at the top that says teacher training. You click on it, and then you'll see for natural resources, summer teacher training, June 8th and June 15th. This very top link is what you want to fill out the reflection form. If you haven't already signed up for block 2, which is the last 2 weeks in June, go ahead and sign up for block 2 livestock, June 22nd and 29th. Now, you already are signed up for next week's. You've already signed up for the first block, so you don't have to worry about signing up for block 1. Just fill out the reflection. And if you're in the first 50, you'll get a box. If not, we still hope you join us so that you can learn all of our fun lessons and all of that. So I just want to say thank you guys so much for joining us. We hope that you guys are getting a lot from these, whether you're just learning stuff new for yourself or getting ideas for your classrooms or to help have activities with your kiddos at home. We hope that you're learning something and getting some sort of takeaway from this. And we love to hear your feedback and sharing ideas on stuff that you've already done that connects to this and how you could use these in your classroom. We love to hear that stuff. So once again, thank you guys so much for joining us. Hopefully we will see you next week. And hope you have a good rest of your day. It's probably humid where you are. It's super humid where I am. So hopefully you enjoy the rest of your day, and we will talk to you guys later. And don't forget to follow us on all of our social media so you don't miss out on anything. Otherwise, have an